Among for there is a public health alert. And it's saying, yeah, that's sorry, yeah. You say there's an outbreak of cholera. The last time we had an outbreak of cholera in Ghana, now it was somewhere 2014. In fact, now the enemy nyai. Nipa e fast ayare hu ehwere won kwa no. Na enye nipa ketewa. Se ye ka yare ba ko e knal pa any cholera. Cholera, as we know it to be, is a bacterial infection and it causes severe diarrhea and vomiting. So your case will be a contracted cholera. Simply put, it means you have eaten shit. Yes, Abusia, it's that simple. What do you be buying? Any feces which has been infected by that bacteria, say transmitted, now it enters your body pet, then you would have the infection. And until the contamination can come in the form of your food or your drinking water. One thing you should know is that cholera is very prevalent and predominant in places with poor sanitation and poor source of drinking water. The symptoms of cholera are clear. Ubehu say individual is having loose, uncontrolled stools, and the top up is vomiting. Not just a whole buying on that was half a count. Not just a double silence, no, and I'm front and back, and it is uncontrolled. This is not the type of stools now to use to kegel muscles not to stop no. Ordinarily, so quite your name so say buying. Now we know say the kegel muscles no. That is when you apply it. It drew baby ultimately the trabain also. And our Johnson same thing applies. But in the case of cholera, the kegel muscles just doesn't apply. Because the stools are just loose and it is uncontrolled. And the danger is the vomiting, that is the top up. Because the individual is having uncontrolled loose stools and it's also vomiting, it also leads to muscle cramps. And it's one other symptom, LA muscle cramps. No? That should tell you say some of the organs are failing because you are losing a lot of water. It stands to reason that when you see an individual when you're cholera, clearly you can see severe dehydration as well. Nipani lose a lot of water and into all of a sudden almost white pale. Depending on how robust your immune system is, the symptoms may appear within hours to 5 days. When our immune system is very strong, you may not see any symptoms within the first day or two. It may probably after the second day. But when our immune system is very strong, within some few hours, then the symptoms begin to show. Now, when we look at the risk factors of cholera, number one, unsafe drinking water. There are a lot of places the source of drinking water is papa. Nansenya Ghana obia no dem bi se galamsey say yensuo no. It should tell you say places are omusuo na say pa. And if that is their only source of drinking water, such people are at a risk of contracting such a condition. Because you will need a good source of drinking water. Your water will always be contaminated, and that can lead to cholera. Poor sanitation is another factor. Now we have a lot of house flies moving around that. Then it should tell you, says, house flies here. So I'm going to settle on any feces that is infected with this bacteria. No more settle on the DNA. Then we are at risk of contracting this condition. And hygiene is very important as far as cholera is concerned. Inadequate hygiene becomes a risk factor in this sense. When we consider the mortality rate for cholera, it is only 1% if it is treated. So you in term report too early to the hospital, near to me started the process of treatment now. Usually the mortality rate is just 1%. But if it is left untreated, then the mortality rate rises up to a whopping 50%. The danger with cholera is the dehydration that is associated with it. Because the feces are loose stools and it's coupled with vomiting, you are losing a lot of water. So if it is not controlled in good time, before you know it, the individual will be moving into hypovolumic shock. And into the first aid, the moment you notice that you are beginning to have these loose stools, before you report to the hospital, make sure you are hydrating. Take a lot of water. For your first aid, you can always get ORS and start drinking it. So symptoms no start and I do the zoom. Now if you don't have ORS in the house, there's a local way of preparing ORS. You take 1 spoonful of sugar and then you add 5 full spoons of salt and then you mix it with water and drink. That can be your first aid until morning when you can quickly rush to the hospital to get treatment. For the prescriber to make the diagnosis, usually they take 2 samples or they can take a rectal swab and then they take it to the reference lab for confirmation. And so by way of prevention, we should make sure we have a good source of drinking water. And sooner no say a source na free, if we don't trust it, then we should always take measures such as warming the water before we drink it. Let's make sure we keep a clean environment, a very hygienic environment, as a matter of fact. Going forward, make sure it is well cooked and make sure whatever food you are eating is very hot. This is not the time to be taking cold food. Say a common de was said, na aduane na wanyano, and aduane na wakakotono. Say enyeshia, please avoid taking it. Aduane no so ayekoto wa abonten so please let's be mindful of the surroundings. Abusia won't lie. I'll be the first to admit say watch anka say watch ayeto wa abonten di. Di esi gota ho, ana di esi bola ho no. Masa ya na taste near dread. But we are not in normal times. And into koto aduane wa abonten. Let's be mindful of the surroundings. Say baby a ball a wa. Also who say once na be bresu ho. So moko see an infected stool so na be see aduane no so a. That increases the risk factor. And so let's be mindful of where we are buying our food these days. Going forward, under no circumstance should you eat any food without washing your hands with soap and under running water at the least chance before you take anything into your body. Let us make sure we are practicing infection prevention. Yare cholera na yeka ho asem so the global impact now it is not pretty. Especially for us in the low income countries now you need a good source of drinking water and clean environment no. So you may any anko ho kakra bi pe we lose a lot of human beings to this condition. Yare na yeka ho asem no it is one of the conditions very embarrassing. So by hospitals need you be basi when you cholera. We cannot send such a patient to the ordinary ward where we have all the other patients. And until we take the person to an isolation bay, which is a cholera bay. And until first and foremost, yes, separate you. They said yet it minunya kwata yedo ko asuojano. The moment you do be rub bay hono, what confirms the fact that it is a very embarrassing condition, they say there is no separation inside the ward. You need a ma side and you need mema side. Ura ward numa, ye nyina ye guhosa. Ade condition into obi a way infected bi en nso no. And into obi ani or de ko hwe no yonko ho. Everybody in the world is just exposed and it's all about passing loose stools and vomiting as well. Among for yen hwe hu ye, na yen boy ho ban. Say the be yen ko fast condition we be man ho. Among for enede no. Won't subscribe to your channel now, please do. Now click your domano so. Say the be anytime you ever drop a new video drop here now on so saka. Thanks so much for watching this video. Adios.